You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Thursday Night AngryMarks.com Pro Wrestling and Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. Tonight, Jordan Garber couldn't be with us, but we have two people on the line, two co-hosts. My name is Stevie J, and joining me, first and foremost, is the producer of the Angry Marks Podcast Network, Killer Kev.
What is up? I have had like 3 hours.
Apparently your vocal pitch.
I've had like 3 hours sleep in 2 days.
You must have had 3 cups of coffee before the show as well, because you sound hyper.
No, not 3 cups of coffee, but about a liter of Diet Cola tonight.
It was either that or 5-hour energy. I was going to keep running down the list of options, but let's find out if my other co-host tonight has had as much caffeinated products. He is the reporter for all things NXT and the man who brings you the Wrestling Outsiders each and every Wednesday night, Emerson Witner.
I have not had that much caffeine. I did have a really big cup of iced tea earlier, so I hope that ties me over till the end of the show at least.
Well, it should be at least enough to get you through a Vince Russo rant, am I right?
Oh, yeah. It's never... I could be on nothing and have a good Vince Russo rant in me, I'm sure.
As I'm sure most of the internet wrestling community could, but we're not in the mood to complain to start out this show. We're in the mood to be happy and celebrate all things NXT Takeover. What a marvelous show.
I said it last night, it was a very good show. It was not including the other NXT shows, probably the second or third best U.S. pay-per-view / special so far this year behind WrestleMania. But I had such higher expectations.
Well,
sorry, I thought you would elaborate on what those expectations were.
Oh yeah. Just that we've seen every NXT special has always had that 4.5-star match in addition to the 4.5-star women's match. And it was like, there was a lot of solid wrestling. The worst thing was Dana Brooke, as expected, but it was like, a lot of it just didn't seem like anything more than you would see on a normal NXT show, except that it was 2 hours instead of 1.
Well, I'm going to get Kevin's opinion on this in a second, but if I may give mine right here, right now, I would say that Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks was better than what you would see on an average episode of NXT. I was pretty freaking blown away by how awesome that match was. Kevin, what were your thoughts on the women's title match?
That match went 35 minutes. When was the last time any women's match on any WWE product went more than 10?
And it's not just that it went over a half hour, it's that it was freaking good from beginning to finish.
It was incredible. It has been years since I have seen wrestling go that strong, that long. And let me emphasize the wrestling here. No hair pulling, no bitch slapping, no lollygagging around, or no soft spots to try to drag this out. This was hard-hitting wrestling from bell to bell.
Absolutely. And I'll kick it back over to Emerson on this note. With that match and that performance that they delivered on TakeOver, don't you think both of these women should be on the main roster right now?
if we're going to base it purely on this match, yes. Sasha's a star. She could be on the main roster right now, even without this match. This was by far the best Becky Lynch match, but I am definitely in a minority when it comes to this match because I thought it was very, very good. It was easily the best women's match of anything that you've seen on WWE television, probably in the past 5 years. If you ignore every other women's title match on an NXT show in the past year and a half. I think this is the 6th NXT special, and I honestly believe the other 5 women's matches, the other 5 women's title matches were all better than this one.
All right, well, let me ask you, out of all 6 of them, which one do you rank number 1?
Probably Charlotte and Natty from the May Takeover show last year, when they had Ric Flair and Bret Hart in their respective corners.
See, I would agree that's probably number 1 or number 2, but I would put Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks at least as high as 3.
I can't. I mean, I know I've gotten a lot of feedback about that particular, comment, but I just, like I said, it wasn't a bad match. It was very, very good. Just that, I don't know, like when watching it, I never felt this is a special match that I'm watching. This is like, I guess it's kind of like my thoughts with the show in general was the entire show. Like I never felt it was that really, really, really special show, at least till, the last 4 or 5 minutes of this match and then the entire main event, which we'll get to later. That felt like a really special show. But like the first hour and a half of the show, it seemed, was just, I don't want to say meh, but it just seemed like not as good as it could be, and that included a lot of this match.
Well, Emerson, let me give you an out here if you say that you've been getting a lot of flack for your opinion about this match. When you say it's 6 out of all 6 women's matches that have been for the title on NXT live events, would you say that all 6 of those matches have been 4 stars or better?
Oh, yes.
Well, then that's your out. It's like you're not saying it's a bad match if they're all that good. It's just there's good, there's great, and there's even greater than great.
Oh, yeah. And every time I've tried to preface that, but I'm sure you've had people shout you down in the past yourself, where you can't tell somebody something, they want to tell you what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at some point these kind of arguments get really absurd anyway because it's all about what you like, and everybody likes something different. So when somebody screams at you that a match is 5 stars instead of 4 3/4, that's just it all comes down to opinion in the end.
Yes.
And you know what? I'll defer to Emerson's much more educated opinion on that, because this is actually the first live NXT show that I've actually gotten to watch. And so my expectations were kind of high as it was. And for the most part, I don't feel like very let down. I do feel let down in spots, but in my opinion, I think this was the strongest match on the show.
I think it was, but I think I was surprised by, I guess if Emerson had high expectations, maybe my expectations were low because of the fact that I knew Sami Zayn was probably not going to be able to work a normal match because of his shoulder, and that Hideo Itami was out of the number 1 contenders match because of his injury. So I think I came in with lower expectations, and most of what I saw delivered above and beyond that. For example, I thought the Finn Balor and Tyler Breeze match to kick off the show was really, really good. Not the best match of the show, maybe between 3 and 4 stars, but I didn't think either one of those guys did anything where I would say that wasn't worthy of being on one of the regular television shows. I thought it fit perfectly into NXT and would have been fine on Raw or SmackDown as well.
That match, I think part of what hurt that match to an extent was that even though we all knew Hideo Itami wasn't wrestling, we all figured that it was still going to be a triple threat match. It may not be Joe in that match, but they figured they'd put somebody in there that could, and just have a great triple threat as well. And taking Hideo out, it hurt the match a lot because, those three in a triple threat would have been off the charts. Not that Balor and Breeze one-on-one wasn't really good, just that we've seen Balor and Breeze wrestle quite a bit. And so it was like, oh, this again. And, yeah.
It is this again, you can say that, but even if you're going to do something more than once, it's still worth it to do it right. And I can't say they did anything wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say I agree with that. Really, this was a good, strong opening match. I really liked it, and this is the first time I've actually gotten to see Finn Balor wrestle. I keep missing him every time I tune into NXT, and I don't bother to go back to watch the previous episodes that I have missed. So I'm
so
fine.
This was your first time experiencing his entrance.
Yes, and that.
What did you think? How did you enjoy that? What did you think of it?
Honestly, a bit too theatrical.
No. There's no such thing as too theatrical with Finn Balor.
It's just a little bit little too dragged out for my liking, but obviously it impressed the fans there, and that's kind of really all that matters. You don't have to impress little old Kev over here in Kentucky, getting ripped off by his WWE Network subscription every month. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not the audience that's being played up to, but
yes, I know you're bitter that you don't get it for free 99 like everybody else, but who cares? Whether you paid for it or not, it was worth it.
But obviously plenty of fans are impressed by the entrance, and it wasn't a bad entrance. It's just maybe just a little too over the top to me. I'm not gonna play, but this is a good opening match. Here's what I want to know though. When the hell are they going to finally pull the trigger on Tyler Breeze and move him up? He's been wrestling for 7 years now. 5 of that signed with WWE, former FCW champion. At the very least, put the NXT title on this kid at some point before you move him up to the roster. But at this, how can he not be ready to move to the main roster? He may not ever be WWE World Heavyweight Champion, but surely he's got an Intercontinental title run in him someplace. He's far and away better than Axel Mania right now.
Well, I'm going to defer to Emerson to answer that one.
I look at him like list the number of people or the list of people who should be brought up. He's always in that spot that, I don't know, it always feels like he could be better. He's not, obviously not bad, he's very good, but I always get a feeling like he could get better and that there are better options to bring up. Like Finn Balor, he could be on the main roster tomorrow. Kevin Owens obviously could be on the main roster tomorrow. In fact, you could argue he is on the main roster.
Yes.
And Hideo Itami has some work. Obviously needs to learn English, so not him. But Tyler Breeze, I don't know. It's like, I can't tell you what he needs to prove on because, like I said, he's very good in most things. I think I've sat here and watched so many NXT acts get called up and fail, for lack of a better word, that I'm not...
Like Bo Dallas.
Emma. Well, Emma had some personal issues, but she wasn't doing that good before then either.
Really with them, it's all about the gimmick. That old gimmick stunk.
It did, but like on NXT, it took her 2 or 3 months to really get that whole gimmick over. And once she got up to the main roster, they gave her 2 or 3 weeks to get it over. And no one watches NXT, or at least not as many as they'd like to think do. So no one knew what she was doing, and what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think it's fair to say that it doesn't matter if you have the time to get the gimmick over. The gimmick has to be the right gimmick. it's like the Shield when they were brought up from NXT to the main roster. They were the perfect gimmick because they were badasses who ran around in a group destroying people. You didn't really have to figure out how to get that over to the audience because that was going to be over no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It all depends on the presentation, but I do agree Emma wasn't given that much of a chance, and Bo Dallas being in curtain jerker matches where he tells people to Bo leave, I mean, that wasn't going to work on Raw either. So the thing I've concluded about NXT, and I explained this to my wife last night because she was watching the show with me, is there are some things that work great at Full Sail University when you've got dedicated fans who love the product and who are going to pop for everything. And the example I'm going to use for this is Enzo Amore, Colin Cassidy, and Carmella. They're going to sing along with that entire entrance, just like back in the day, people used to do that for Road Dogg and Jesse James. But if you take that gimmick outside of Full Sail University and bring it to Raw, and he goes, bada bing, bada boom, realest guys in the room, they're going to be met with stone cold silence. Go ahead, Emerson. You have something to say, I'm sure.
I knew that's what you were going to say. That you were going to say Enzo and Colin. The problem with Enzo and Colin, the same problem I always have when people bring them up. Enzo is short. Colin's really tall. Enzo has all the charisma and personality. Colin has very, very little of it. And so when they get called up, they'll be a tag team for 6 months, and Vince is going to be like, oh, this guy's almost 7 foot tall. He's going to be my next Kevin Nash. And they're going to break them up, and they're going to do nothing with either of them. Because Colin, maybe he improved a little bit, but I just remember when Enzo broke his leg and Colin was a single for 6 months, and they did absolutely nothing with him, and nobody cared about him because everyone likes Enzo, and him by himself, not so much.
It's like Festus and Jesse Dalton.
Kind of, except I wasn't following developmental at the time, so I don't know how over they were.
Well, bringing them up to the main roster, it's going to end up being the same thing because that was exactly the same dynamic there. You had one guy who was really short and one guy who was really tall and one guy with all the charisma and one guy with all the charisma of a jar of mayonnaise, and, you know, they broke them up after 6 months, and that was pretty much it. It was done. And it was a rather uninteresting run. But, definitely to Steve's point, that gimmick is so freaking over. And let me tell you, it took a while to win me over on that too. When they first started doing this, I'm like, this is the cheesiest, goofiest thing I have ever seen. But now I'm chanting right along with it. And it definitely works in NXT, but, it's not going to work in WWE. So eventually they're going to have to either break that up or find a way to tune them differently or something. But I tell you what, for the most part, I liked the tag team title match. And I've liked what all 4 of these guys have been doing for a while now.
And I like the fact that Blake and Murphy are blatant heels now. That they brought in Alexa Bliss to help them neutralize Carmella, and they openly cheated to win and retain their titles because they're so desperate to hang on to those belts now. That's the kind of heels I like. That they've got something they don't want to let go of, and they'll cheat, they'll steal, they'll connive, they'll backstab, they'll do whatever it takes. I like Blake and Murphy as the straight up heels.
Indeed.
I still can't believe they had Alexa Bliss, little pixie-sized, fairy, cute little Alexa Bliss.
Oh, you're not going Brian Alvarez over here. His whole she's 5 foot nothing argument.
Honestly, I didn't listen, but I like to say if he did go on that argument, I had that argument before him. But she's so short and sweet and cute and pretty. She's a natural baby face. And then you get Carmella, who's booed. She's like that that duo was so insanely over, and they put Carmella out there, and she gets booed. And so it's like, okay, it makes sense because they're dropping little hints. Carmella's going to turn heel and join Blake and Murphy, and then what happens? Alexa Bliss, of all people, turned heel.
Honestly, and this is where I agree with Dave Meltzer, and I know you said you didn't hear it, but I thought his argument was perfectly valid for this. It's developmental. They're supposed to try on new things and see how they fit. Let her try being a heel for a while, and if it doesn't work, they can go back to her being a face.
I can see his point, but it's like, that was the one thing that irked me more than anything last night was, I don't know, she just doesn't come off to me like, wow, what a heel. Like, it doesn't seem like she could be a heel. And I could be wrong. Lord knows I've been wrong in the past. But, yeah.
And the other thing that was made as a point of whether or not you should turn people heel or face was Brian said he didn't believe Naomi would be a good heel when they turned her heel, and he admitted he was flat out wrong and that she was an awesome heel. So who's to say that Alexa Bliss couldn't be the most awesome heel ever? Who wasn't he sure of when they turned heel? Naomi. Oh, I guess. I mean, she's turned out to be a really good heel. I like her as a heel. I like her shoes.
Well, bringing it back around on this match, though, speaking of things like, I didn't like the end on this. I mean, the deal with Carmella getting hurt and being the distraction, you know, I kind of figured that was coming, but as soon as as Enzo went to his finish where, you know, he's pretty much out of it and Kaz has to drag him over the ropes and then slam him into his opponent to finish the match. As soon as they went to that, I just knew on this match there was going to be a fuck finish. And sure enough, there was. And that kind of ruined an otherwise really good match for me.
I guess I wasn't surprised by the fuck finish. I was expecting that all along. And it's in the middle of the card. It wasn't the main event. It wasn't the co-main event. It wasn't the women's title match. It wasn't a title match. It was, but it was the tag title, so I felt like it was okay.
I was expecting the fuck finish, just a different fuck finish.
Yeah, if there was a different fuck finish, I think I probably would have been okay with it. But it's like this particular finish that they've been using in every match, it's going to end up being a liability for them. And I'll even go as far as this. I can see a point where if they decide to break the team up, it'll be because of this finish, and basically it'll be Kaz literally tired of dragging Enzo's carcass around, and instead of throwing him on top of the guy to finish him, he's just going to slam Enzo to the mat, stomp a mud hole in him, and call it a day.
It's a possibility.
Oh yeah, I mean, it almost became a running joke for the longest time. Enzo got no offense in. Like, every one of their tag matches would be exactly the same. Colin would run wild, Enzo would tag in and immediately get cut off without hitting anything. He'd get beat on, and then he'd make the hot tag because they messed up, because the heels messed up and ran into each other, and then Colin would do all the offense for the finish, and they'd get the win because Colin would throw Enzo into the opponent.
Indeed.
Well, go ahead, Kev.
I just said indeed.
I was just going to say, well, then why don't we move on to something that, if we can agree that this wasn't a fuck finish, maybe at least it was better than expectations, because most of the time for a Baron Corbin match, my expectations are pretty low if it's not a 30-second squash. But I thought he and Rhino had a very physical match, probably the best Baron Corbin has ever looked on an NXT live event. Emerson, what did you think?
I think it was the best Baron Corbin match ever, and that's saying something considering he had that match with Adrian Neville.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was at least twice as long as his longest match before this, and it wasn't bad. I mean, I can honestly say I had to go back and rewatch this because at this point was when the news broke about TNA, and so I was horribly distracted. And I keep looking up, and I mean, the match wasn't falling apart, and it seemed to go well, and I rewatched it. It was still good. So I can't complain.
Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin, since you hadn't had any experience with an NXT Live special before this point, have no previous experience with Baron Corbin, so you came in completely fresh slate on him. How did you feel about it?
I thought it was okay. You know, I can definitely tell he's still a little young, a little green.
Yeah, he's definitely still green, even after this much time.
Yeah, so pairing him with a veteran like Rhino, who's an expert at putting people over, I thought was a good move, and I think the match went just fine. You know, I don't have a lot of complaints about it. It wasn't a particularly notable match. I did really like the end, though, where you expected that this was going to be a typical Rhino Gore for the win, and then just literally out of nowhere, Corbin puts it away, and I liked it. So, and it filled a spot right there in the middle. No complaints. Good match.
Yeah.
You know, out of all the matches, this may have been the weakest one. Well, no, I'll go ahead and say, this may have been the weakest one, but by saying that this is the weakest one, that's in no way saying it's bad.
Well, the only thing bad I can see about it is what Bionic Iguana just said in our chat room, was that he no-sold yet another rock bottom to get the win. But Baron Corbin's supposed to have this big, strong, unbreakable kind of personality anyway, so I'm okay with him no-selling a rock bottom, because after all, it's developmental. It's not like he's taking a rock bottom from The Rock. Then I might be upset if he was no-selling that move.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
All right. Well, since Emerson brought up the news that broke during NXT Takeover, I want to use that as a segue to the main event, because I don't know if it's ironic, but how interesting that the once former, I'd say one of the top 2 or 3 stars of TNA and Impact Wrestling, made his WWE debut coming out after the main event of NXT Takeover. Emerson, your thoughts on Samoa Joe arriving?
I think it was honestly amazing that I had to go back because, again, my brother said that the opening to his theme song was a lot like his TNA song, and I didn't think so at first.
Very much on purpose.
Oh, I didn't think so at first, so I had to go back and rewatch it, and sadly he was right. And so I was surprised when everyone realized it was Joe before he came out.
I think that crowd showed up at Full Sail University expecting Joe to come out at some point.
Now, by the way, I'll forget about this, but I don't mention it now. Did you watch the pre-show at all?
No, I did not see the pre-show. I did not get home in time for anything other than the main card. Okay,
well, there was somebody standing outside the building, but you could see him behind Byron Saxton, wearing, it was a bright sunny day in Florida, and he's wearing all dark clothing and had a towel over his head. It's kind of a big guy, too. And
so you're saying Joe was outside the building before the show?
I don't know if it probably wasn't him, but I mean, that's what a lot of people were saying, or a lot of people were thinking, because you just see this dark creature with a towel over his head, standing there for no reason at all.
If the Observer report on this is accurate, they didn't even bring Joe backstage until 2 minutes before he showed up on TV. So if that was him, that was not on purpose, I don't think. They weren't trying to give a hint. They were trying to keep it a secret, even though it was probably the worst kept secret in wrestling this week, given that everybody was talking about all his dates that he booked for the Independence in August and whether or not he was really coming, and JR was blogging about him. When the news kind of reaches a critical mass at that point, you know something is happening. And I kept telling people, I'm going to be a little smug about this right now. I kept telling people he can still take independent dates. That doesn't mean he's not coming to NXT. I told people this over and over again, and I was vindicated.
I think the only reason why I thought, he might not be doing it is because Triple H during that media thing, every other time they did one of those NXT conference calls, he was always honest and open about how the negotiations were going with different people. So why wouldn't I believe that, that didn't look like he was going to be signing Joe right now anyway. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll see next month. But yeah, so in that case, I was a little surprised.
and it made perfect sense to have him come out. I mean, a lot of people thought he was coming out in the triple threat match to replace Hideo Itami. That to me was not the plan. I had this figured all along with Sami Zayn being injured, but still saying that he was medically cleared to compete. That was just a smoke and mirrors job where they were basically going to have him get laid out. I didn't even know it was going to be a no contest and that they were never going to officially call the match, but that works just as well as the idea I envisioned in my head, because either way, I figured Sami Zayn takes the beating of a lifetime and he's unable to continue, and who should come out to answer the challenge but Samoa Joe, and that's exactly what we saw.
See, I looked at it differently. I figured that would happen where he'd beat up Sami Zayn, just so viciously, and he'd call out anyone in the back for open challenge, and I thought Balor would come out as the number one contender and take him out.
Well, that does lead to the issue I wanted to address. I'll have you take it first, Emerson, then I'll kick it over to Kevin. Since they did anoint Finn Balor as the number one contender in the opening match of the main card, what do you do now with Samoa Joe being there as well? Do you have him step aside and wait and let Joe get a shot? Because we have already seen Kevin Owens and Finn Balor with a clean finish, so maybe you put that match on hold and have Joe get the shot instead.
I think it depends on Joe's contract, because if Joe's just on a limited dates contract and just is like a little kind of a tryout type thing, you do the Joe match first, you have Owens beat him, and then go on to Balor. But if, Joe is in it for the long term, well, quote-unquote long term, then you do the Balor match first as a setup to Joe.
Well, before I kick it to Kevin, I'll add this note for his consideration. What we have seen from the news reports today is that Joe is currently on an open contract, but he has agreed to a merchandising deal. He has agreed to put NXT as his first priority. So if there's a conflicting date, he'll work WWE's date and not his indie date. And they believe that he will sign to a bigger, more full-fledged deal down the road. So knowing all of those things, Kevin, your opinion on who should get the next shot?
I think Finn Balor should get the next shot.
And you think Joe should just step aside and wait?
I think they're going to do a longer, slower burn between Samoa Joe and Owens. I think you do it with Balor for sure. I don't know who gets the title after that. But whatever it ends up being, I think you go ahead and save Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens for a couple of months down the road.
How long do you think they can keep that on the slow burn, though, after we've already seen them physically within each other's presence, and we've seen Joe taking over the ring and Kevin Owens seemingly backing down from the challenge? How long do you think they can do a slow burn after that?
Oh, I think they could do it for a couple months easy. Because it's going to just keep on doing it, and it just keeps wearing down on Owens, and Owens trying to do all this other stuff, trying to defend his NXT title. I don't know if he's going to continue to do anything on Raw on the main roster at this point. I don't think he will, honestly, but he's trying to focus on all this stuff, and Joe keeps popping up, and keeps popping up. He doesn't interfere, other than maybe to run in to make a save just to chase Owens off and give some breather to whoever his opponent is. But eventually it's going to piss Owens off enough that he's going to lose his cool again, and he'll agree to whatever to finally get Joe in the ring and address it and be done with it.
Well, here's where I'm going to segue back to Emerson, because we do have an interesting conundrum here with Owens appearing on Raw, getting in John Cena's face, giving him a beating, and stomping on the United States title to set up a match in little over a week now at the Elimination Chamber live event. So if he's not a full-fledged member of the main roster and he's still going to be on NXT as the champion, it makes me think, well, there's got to be some sort of exit strategy to get him either back to the NXT roster full-time or on the main WWE roster full-time. I don't see how he can keep bouncing back and forth between both, because if they were going to let people do that, they would have let Paige keep the NXT title instead of having her vacate it. Emerson, your thoughts?
I think, the odds of Kevin Owens winning went up once they announced it was a non-title match. Because I knew he wasn't going to win the U.S. title, but I think there's a very, very good shot that, since it's not for the title, that he may just win and beat Cena. And they may do it to where Cena's next foe, whether it be Rusev again or whomever, comes out and does whatever. Who knows? Maybe they can even do a deal where Joe comes out and interferes, but that might be going too much with it and accidentally hits Cena. But even that, I honestly don't know. I honestly don't expect Owens to lose clean, and I don't expect Cena to lose clean, which probably means Cena's going to win with the STF clean in the middle.
Well, one possibility that has been expounded upon by other shows is the idea of a schmoz finish. And I know it's not necessary because it's a non-title match now, so he could go over and not take the U.S. title with him. But even so, would a schmoz finish, like a no contest or a double DQ or whatever, would that be enough to get Kevin Owens over on a main show like Elimination Chamber?
Honestly, no. I know this sounds like your typical anti-Cena rhetoric, but no one's going to take him seriously if he goes 50-50 with Cena or he does a no contest with Cena. He has to beat Cena if anyone's going to take him seriously as a main roster guy. And
Kevin? Oh, sorry, go on.
I mean, that's it.
Oh, okay. Well, Kevin, do you agree?
I think Owens is going to go out there. It'll be John Cena getting all his moves in first. Kevin Owens weathers it, really beats the piss out of Cena, and then Rusev runs out, breaks it off, and Kevin Owens just kind of backs up and is like, you know what, this isn't my fight, and I'm just going to back out of it for the day.
Interesting. And also interesting, AngryMarks chat room, AngryMarks.com/chat. Bionic Iguana has a side note to what we're talking about regarding Kevin Owens. He says he thinks William Regal will be fired, quote unquote, for putting his hands on Kevin Owens, and that Jason Albert will be the new general manager. Now, I don't know if he's going to take that role on, considering he just got promoted to the head trainer officially on the conference call that Emerson was referring to earlier, the Triple H conference call to promote TakeOver. They announced the new head trainers as Jason Albert. He had unofficially been the head trainer ever since we lost Bill DeMott. Well, not lost. There was no real loss. But he's gone, and now the head trainers are him and Sarah Del Rey. So can you really see him taking a storyline role at the same time he's fully fledged taking over developmental?
I can't.
It's possible, but I don't think so.
And I can't really see Regal being fired anyway. I could see him being suspended without pay or something.
I can't see that. I can't even see that either. I mean, if they even address it at all, I think it's very simple. Owens continually disregarded every referee there in refusing to break off his attack, and then he disregarded a direct order from Regal to break off his attack. And it's just going to be, you know what, it was unfortunate, but it was justified.
So Regal had to get physical. He had no choice. Emerson, do you agree with that?
I agree. I would love to see it leading to a match. I just don't think it will. William Regal, I honestly believe is one of the best wrestlers ever. It's
Amen.
Too bad that Vince didn't think so. But what can you do?
Amen.
Amen.
I just think, there has to be some sort of follow-up to it. It's not going to be something ignored. But I don't see it as something like your normal general manager where, oh my God, he put his hands on me, so now I'm going to get this guy to go after him. It's going to be more like, you put your hands on me, I may go down swinging, but I'm going to get my licks in and I'll kick your butt myself.
I can see that more like, yeah, they do a match where Regal's like, give me 5 minutes with him. I'll teach him some manners, sunshine.
I don't know. I think Regal's a little beyond that at this point.
I could see him busting it out one more time. But I agree, he's kind of beyond it at this point, but he has had a cup of tea with a match here and there in NXT. I think he could do it one more time if he wanted.
Possibly.
Hey, he had a great match with Cesaro a few years ago.
Exactly. That Cesaro match is one of my all-time favorites.
And another one with Cassius Ohno, Chris Hero.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you noticed that Kevin Owens has quietly taken over that Cassius Ohno spot? K.O. K.O.
Oh yeah, that was the first thing I noticed and thought of, like when he got the name Kevin Owens. I'm like, okay, so Chris Hero really isn't coming back anytime soon.
Yeah, that was made pretty damn obvious. And I should note, nobody can see this right now, but I've been proudly wearing my Kevin F. and Steen shirt all day long today. So that's how I felt after NXT TakeOver. I was like, call him Kevin Owens, call him Kevin Steen, call him whatever you want. I was just thoroughly happy with that main event where I got to see him do what he does. You know, some people will say that's a bad guy, that's a heel. To me, that's just Kevin Steen being Kevin Steen.
Indeed.
By the way, did you see that Kevin Owens' kid couldn't even follow the storyline?
Oh, you mean on Raw when he freaked out when he saw his dad come out on television?
Yeah, and the whole story was that Kevin was mad that his child wears a Sami Zayn shirt instead of a Kevin Owens shirt. And of course his kid sitting there wearing a Kevin Owens shirt. Couldn't even follow the story.
But he was playing with a John Cena action figure.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so that's something for him to be mad at John Cena about, is like, he's my son, but he's playing with your figure. How dare he?
You know, if I could bring us back around to the person that's kind of been forgotten in all this conversation, Sami Zayn. I understand why this match went the way it did, you know, and it's kind of obvious that they were probably going to do it like that. But I think this is a great example of why Sami Zayn is never going to be a WWE World Champion. And he may not...
I don't know if I agree with that, because they said the same thing about Daniel Bryan, and it didn't turn out that way. Daniel Bryan reached the top of that mountain.
And you know what? If the same thing had happened to Daniel Bryan in NXT, Daniel Bryan never would have been a champion either. But specifically because Daniel Bryan's career did take the track that it did, and that Sami Zayn is already on this same track, they're not going to put a title on him. Because here's the issue that I have. And to a degree, it kind of pisses me off a little bit. And I hate saying this, and I'm probably going to get some hate mail for this. But here's why I'm saying Sami Zayn is not going to ever be a WWE champion, and may not ever even be a mid-card champion on the main roster. Sami Zayn goes out there and he works too hard. He works too hard. And because of that, he gets himself hurt more easily. And he's coming into this show tonight with a torn rotator cuff, and instead of taking it easy on the spots, it's as if he damn near doubled down on every spot that involved any possibility of legit injuring that shoulder further. You know, it's like, you know, you might as well have just painted a target right on his shoulder and just told everybody, you know what, just take a steel chair and hit me there, and hit me there, and hit me there, and hit me there, and hit me there. This is tearing up his body. He is going to be more chewed up than Daniel Bryan was by the time he gets up to the main roster. And I think because of that, they're never going to put a title on him. I mean, he's got this injury. He's got a concussion on him. I mean, that is just cutting his time at the top short. So, you know, it just absolutely frustrates me. But then again, Sami Zayn's been in this business so long already. He's done so much already. You know, enjoy what's left of your ride here, because I don't think there's going to be very much more of a ride left. I mean, there may be years left on his career still, but I don't see he's going to hit a plateau. at some point, and he's just not going to be able to go further because they're never going to trust him because, if we put him in a big storyline or we put him in a title run and we put a title on him, we're going to be screwed because he's worked himself the way he has, his body breaks down on him.
Well, I think we're about ready to move on from NXT TakeOver, but before we do, I want to give Emerson a chance to weigh in on that. Do you think, and this is not just an issue isolated to this show, I've seen this come up in other places this week, do you think that some of these guys are already too far beaten up when they arrive in NXT and that they're never going to be able to make it on the main roster, as Kevin said, because instead of taking it easy, they double down on everything and just wind up getting hurt all the time?
Oh, I think it's very possible. I mean, we've all been to enough indie shows where people are killing themselves in front of 50 people to get noticed, but that's kind of what you need to do. If you're not genetically gifted to look like Rob Terry, for instance, you're not going to get noticed unless, you are this obscenely great wrestler. I mean, Kevin Steen and El Generico, I mean, if they were just your random run-of-the-mill tag team that did good tag team matches on the indie scene, they may never have gotten a sign. They may have, but I doubt it. They had to basically kill each other and kill themselves in different scenarios, and they got noticed by WWE. They got noticed by William Regal and other people in WWE who pushed for them to get signed. And it's sad that by this point, who knows what their bodies are like. And Danielson, I remember 2007, I think it was, he was wrestling for ROH, and I think it was his eye, he had a problem with his eye socket in a match and still continued doing the same exact style for the rest of the very long match.
I was at that pay-per-view taping. That was in Chicago Ridge, where he had Takeshi Morishima attacking his eye during the match.
Yeah. And it's your career is not going to last very long, and by the time it gets to WWE, I'm sure there's a lot of us who are like, man, I can't wait for him to have these quality matches again, but by the time his time came around to get a giant push, he was so beaten that, he was hanging on by a thread, you could say.
Well, I don't know any way to get around it because you said it yourself. These guys are killing themselves to get noticed, and then how do you stop them from continuing to do that exact same style once they finally do get signed, because it's what got them to the dance? So I don't know how you get people to tone it down when WWE sets the bar so high for people to even get into NXT in the first place.
The sad thing is WWE, this is a weird way to say it, but it's the safest style of wrestling that you'll see. It's they don't usually encourage each other to hit each other as hard as humanly possible. They do have, take all these precautions to keep everyone's health in mind. And then and everyone still gets beaten up, and that's the nature of the business. And it's almost inevitable.
Yeah,
it's Ego del Fantasmo said this on his interview the other day, that he has to remind himself to say a prayer every time he goes out to wrestle a match because it's always dangerous no matter what you do. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, but WWE style has to be the safest because you're out there 250, 300 days a year. It has to be the safest because they have to get the most mileage out of these guys because they've already got all these shows lined up in advance where they've promised fans that this person and this person and this person is going to be there, and you can't deliver that if your guys are tore up. I mean, Ring of Honor can get away with it when a guy a week goes down with an injury because, they have such short tour dates anyway, and they're so small they can get away with that. WWE, if WWE would lose a lot of fans if week after week after week guys were going down and cards that they've promoted in areas for 1-2 months in advance was not the card that the fans get when the day finally gets there.
I'm going to somewhat disagree with you there, Kevin, because a lot of Ring of Honor guys are under full contracts now, and they're taping TV every couple of months, and they're doing live events almost every other week in a different city. So they can't really afford for a lot of people to go down off of doing crazy matches and getting themselves hurt. They need guys. In fact, it was kind of a hole in their programming for a while that Adam Cole was hurt and couldn't compete. It kind of left a void. So it just goes to show that they can't afford for guys to get hurt any more than WWE can.
Well, good. If they fix that, that's great, but obviously there's a good example of it. So.
All right. Well, sorry, Emerson. I'm throwing this to you actually because we've sort of danced around this issue now and we've not full on addressed it. And I want to segue to it by saying that we got a statement that was sent to all the different websites today. I didn't personally get this statement. I'm just saying, like, PW Insider got it, and Torch got it, and the Observer got it. And so by dissemination, it ends up everywhere else, whether you were sent it or not. And it said TNA, in no uncertain terms, disputes the idea that they are a dead horse on Destination America, and anybody who says so is committing defamation, and we will go after them in the strongest terms. And this all results from the Wrestling Observer newsletter reporting this week that Impact Wrestling was canceled by Destination America before the end of their 2-year contract because there was an opt-out clause in September, and they chose to exercise that clause because the ratings aren't good enough for them to get back what they're losing on the cost of the programming, mainly because advertisers don't want to advertise on Impact. And this is all laid out in all the detail necessary in the Observer newsletter, and they're disputing that this is even true and saying that they've made it up out of whole cloth. So, Emerson, your thoughts?
I think it's hilarious for a number of reasons. The first of which is advertisers. Have you ever seen some of the other shows on Destination America?
Oh, yeah. I used to watch Barbecue Pitmasters all the time before they even had Impact Wrestling. I was actually a regular watcher of their channel.
Well, and most people didn't even know that channel existed until TNA ended up on there. But some of these shows that you see, there's like the second-rate Ghost Hunters, the second-rate bar rescue shows, all this stuff that advertisers are saying, I want to advertise on this, but I won't advertise on TNA, on Impact. I just think it's hilarious. And then the thing with TNA now setting up that statement, it's almost a case of what else could they have done? Because if they admit it, well, that's now the second TV station that's kicked them off in 2 years. If they deny it, they have 2 or 3 months on Wednesday to bring up their rating, pretty much double their rating what they're doing now, if not triple it. And I'll sit here, and there's a very good chance if TNA is doing 1 million viewers, and I don't think it's going to happen, but if TNA is doing 1 million viewers on Wednesday by July, I think they stay on Destination America. But like I said, I don't think it's going to happen. But I think there's part of them that are like, well, if we get the ratings up, they may change their mind and stick with us through and through.
They can say that, but the fact that they, according to Dave, canceled it even before the move to Wednesday night, which was supposed to bring the ratings up, since their theory is that everybody's going out on Friday nights and not staying home to watch Impact. Well, apparently they didn't even have enough faith that Wednesday was going to bring the ratings up, because it's just like you said, if they can sell better to a second-rate Ghost Hunters knockoff show than they can sell during a show that draws twice as big of an audience, then it's kind of the whole thing we talked about before, Kevin, you and I, when we talked about the Westminster Kennel Club, how it used to preempt Raw. And they would get away with that because they made way more in advertising on that than they did on wrestling. History repeating itself here.
I think really what's hurting this relationship right now is twofold. I think first of all, I think the amount of money that's being put into production, I think hurts because, yeah, in theory, you should be able to get advertisers to a show that's drawing twice the numbers. But when the production costs are 3 to 4 times of your knockoff show, that does hurt. And the other thing is that Destination America is just not on enough basic cable systems. The problem that I've seen time and time again with fans wanting to watch, here's the problem. TNA has been putting out fairly solid product for the last 6 or 7 months, and fans are hearing about it. And even fans who turned TNA off at once because it was pure garbage are willing to give it another try again, but they can't watch it because on too many cable systems, Destination America is on a premium tier where they've got to pony up $7 to $15 extra a month, and fans just aren't willing to do that. And that is really, I think, what's hurting this relationship more than anything. I think TNA probably should have done a little bit more due diligence in their research and brought that up first. But Destination America should have just completely accepted the fact that they are not in the best position. And no matter how strong a program TNA Wrestling does and how many people they bring in, they're not going to bring in as many as you'd think, simply because Destination America is just not poised to do that.
I think the bottom line is that when you're in 40% as many homes as Spike TV, you're probably only going to get 40% of the audience that you did on Spike TV. And Destination America probably thought 100% of that audience was coming to their channel, which was never feasible or practical. So they were always going to be disappointed no matter how many people were tuning in, unless it was over 1 million people. And that just wasn't going to happen.
No win scenario.
No win scenario.
Now, according to Wikipedia, and of course you know what a source they are, but they say 57 million American households receive Destination America. Now, my question is, does that 57 million households include people who have that option if they pay another $15, or is it 57 million people who have already paid that extra $15 that have that channel?
The last time this was brought up, it was explained that 57 million people can access it, but that doesn't mean that all 57 million people have paid for it. It's just available to the consumers of those different cable or satellite providers, that 57 million of them have it available.
So meaning that if they decide they want to watch TNA, they can turn the clicker until it comes on.
No, that they have either on the tier they have, or they can buy a tier that has it. That doesn't mean that they have it.
Okay, so 57...
It would be like saying 120 million people have access to HBO, but that doesn't mean all 120 million of those people are subscribers. It's more like 5 or 10 million, however many people actually do.
Okay, so it's 57 million potential viewers.
Right, but that doesn't sound good when you try to sell a network. You never say potential. You always refer to it's like the old WWE tactic of exaggerating the size of their audience at WrestleMania. You never give the actual number. You always make it bigger to make it sound better.
Now, when I actually, up until a month ago, didn't even have Destination America. I upgraded my own home cable to get HD and a DVR, and Comcast threw in every channel they had. And that's how I got Destination America. And so I imagine there's a lot of people like me, just with basic standard def cable, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not paying more money just for TNA, because I can't think of any other reason I would watch Destination America. I mean, mind you, I don't actually watch TNA very often anyway, but, I mean, now that I have it, it's like, oh, well, the Wolves are wrestling Austin Aries and Bobby Roode, I'll tune in and watch that. But
not a lot of people can.
No. Our old friend Vince Russo helped kill a second company, and I know, he didn't actually kill the company. He just put it on the deathbed. He didn't kill WCW, he put it on the deathbed. I know.
All right, but you bring up Vince Russo, but Eric Bischoff didn't have anything to do with this either?
Eric Bischoff, like, the company wasn't exactly thriving before Bischoff got there. It's like, yeah, I think in 2009 they'd made a small profit, but the company lost $40 or $50 million before Eric Bischoff walked in the door. The company was doing 8,000 pay-per-view buys before Hulk Hogan walked in the Impact Zone. And did they really help? Maybe. Dixie like to claim that Hogan got them a lot of international TV deals, but I mean, that's really amounted to nothing. I honestly don't think Hogan did more harm than good, but I don't think he did very much good either.
Well, on that note, why don't we shift things away from TNA, Impact Wrestling, Vince Russo, Destination America, and onto more fun subjects like the New Japan Best of the Super Juniors. And we have with us Jason Harland, a.k.a. The Great Sudoku. Jason, good evening.
Good evening, indeed. The 22nd annual Battle of the Super Juniors is coming up at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time where I live, 6:30 p.m. Tokyo local time. So, yeah, after the podcast, I'm actually going to go to bed, wake up, and watch it real time and have some recaps on for the site. But I did want to come on this week just to give some predictions for the round one matches that have already been announced.
Absolutely. Let's get into that, and we'll get some thoughts from Emerson and I as you go through the card.
All right, let's just start off with the first match that was listed, Jushin Thunder Liger versus Yohei Komatsu. And for this one, I have Komatsu winning. Liger is kind of in that passing the torch phase of his career, and I just don't see him going over here.
Yeah, I would kind of agree. It's Liger's role to pass the torch, kind of like what Cena is doing with the U.S. title matches right now, where people aren't necessarily winning, but he's making them look strong, whereas Liger can go even one step further than that and actually put the people over him and not just make them look strong.
And there was a time and a place where Liger would book himself to the moon and he'd win the tournament year after year, but those days are well behind him.
Emerson, your thoughts?
I'm still amazed that I was watching Jushin Liger wrestle when I was 7 years old on my television, and I'm now 30, and I'm going to watch a show tomorrow where Jushin Liger is a big part of it. Obviously, his best days are past him. I watched him twice over WrestleMania weekend. He's still amazing. And, you know, as much as I love New Japan, I love it so much that I honestly couldn't even make a prediction in most of this. I'll go Liger just because I don't think he's going to put everybody over along the way in the tournament. So I'll figure give him a win before he starts putting everyone over.
That's fair. I can see that argument. So, Jason, what's the next one on the card?
Mass number 2, Tiger Mask versus Nick Jackson. Hashtag BizCliz in this one. Same reason that Liger isn't going over. I think the same thing applies to Tiger Mask. And we bring up a good point. You know, Nick Jackson might not go over in this one because he is known as a tag team wrestler. I just see Tiger Mask putting over a lot of guys in this tournament.
I'm going to go with Nick Jackson as well, especially since the Young Bucks are that team right now, and to see them advance in the Super Juniors would really cement their top of the Indies status at this point. So, yeah, I pick Nick Jackson as well. Emerson?
Now, I could be wrong because I don't know what the blocks are. I don't have it in front of me. But I know, what's his name, the junior heavyweight champion, whose name suddenly I forget.
Kenny Omega.
Yeah, that's right. And I see it somewhere like Nick Jackson gets really far in the tournament, and they tease that will they have the two Bullet Club brethren going against each other for the junior title off of this, and then he eventually goes down, if not in the finals, then near the finals. But I think Nick Jackson will win this one.
All right, let's move on to the third match on the card.
Third match, we have Alex Shelley versus David Finlay, and I got to go with Alex Shelley, who I'd like to see win this tournament outright.
Oh, I think I would bust out my autographed Alex Shelley t-shirt and put that one on. In fact, if he goes all the way in the Super Juniors Cup, I might even change my Facebook profile picture to the one I took with Alex Shelley at an independent show here in Omaha.
I will make a 3 for 3 for Alex. How is David Finlay? How good is he? I mean,
well, this
I'd
is
imagine-
Fit Finlay that we're talking about, right? Dave Fit Finlay.
is it Fit Finlay? I thought it was his son or something.
I thought it was his son too.
Is it his son or is it him? I don't know.
If it's Fit Finlay, dang, it'll be a great match. But I thought it was his son.
Well, I'm going to look this up now because when you say Dave Finlay, the only one I think of is Fit Finlay, so that naturally leaves me confused. Where is the...
I'm just reading it on the Observer site. He's David got listed as David Finlay III, and I can't imagine
if it
why.
says David Finlay III, then it's definitely his son.
It would be his son, yeah.
I can't imagine why he'd have Fit listed as the third.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fit Finlay was Dave Finlay Jr., so Dave Finlay III would be Fit Finlay's son.
Mm-hmm.
So it is El Hijo de Finlay.
Well, I'm looking at the two blocks right now, and Block A is Barbaro Carbonario, Beretta, Chase Owens, Ghetto, Liger, O'Reilly, Taguchi, and Komatsu. Block B is Shelly Fish, Finlay III, Kushida, Mascara Dorada, Nick Jackson, Rocky Romero, and Tiger Mask 4. So yeah, I apologize for confusing one Fit Finlay with the other Dave Finlay.
Just listening to that, I think it comes down to Taguchi and Shelly. I know I just said Nick Jackson was going to go to near the finals, but I figured, that for some reason I thought Shelly and Taguchi would be in the same block and Jackson on the other side, but I was wrong.
All right, well, let's continue to go down it match by match. Even though I just read off the blocks, we still want to make predictions for these individual matches for the first round of the Cup. So back to you, Jason.
Sure. Next match is Barbaro Caverino versus Chase Owens, and I have Chase Owens in this one because I don't see the CMLL missing link going over in this one.
Yeah, I don't think Carbonario is winning this match either.
I've seen little of Chase Owens. I wasn't terribly impressed, but I think he wins this as well.
All right, what's up next?
Next, we have a non-tournament match. We have an 8-man tag team match. Haruki Gato, Togi Makabe, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and Katsuyori Shibata versus Tomokai Hama, versus Shinsuke Nakamura, Tomohiro Ishii, Toru Kano, Kazushi Sakuraba, and Yoshihashi.
I love Toru Yano. Like, him and Bad Luck Fale are my two favorite, quote-unquote, bad wrestlers in the world. And, yeah, just saying.
I have that team going over. I mean, you've got the King of Strong Style, you got the Stone Pitbull, you got the Gracie Killer, and Loose Explosion. Oh, yeah, and that other guy that you said is your favorite bad wrestler. You got all them together, and they're going over in that match.
All right, I'll agree with that. Let's move on to the next match.
Next match we have is an official Best of the Super Junior Turners match, Rocky Romero versus Bobby Fish, and I'm a Rocky Romero mark. He sold me. I like Rocky Romero in this match simply because he's awesome, and Fish looks like a guy that should be serving me lattes at Starbucks.
Yeah, but you forget that Redragon is one of the best tag teams of the last 2 years.
Yeah, they are, but I have them flip-flopping in the next match, which I'll get to next, so that's my prediction for Romero and Fish.
I guess I'll just be a stick in the mud and say Bobby Fish just to be different.
See, I'm going 50-50, but the opposite. I'm going Bobby Fish in this one myself. I'm also a really big Red Dragon fan. It almost came from out of nowhere because I didn't really care for them for the longest time. And then all of a sudden last year, I don't know what happened, but I suddenly fell in love with them.
All right. Well, Jason, take us on to the next match.
Next match is the other half of both teams. We have Beretta versus Kyle O'Reilly, and I'm going with Kyle O'Reilly because it's going to be a flip-flop from the previous match.
Well, I guess then I'm going to flip-flop too and not say O'Reilly wins. I'll go with Beretta or Trent ? Or whatever he's calling himself this week.
Yeah, I'm going with Trent in this one too.
All right, let's move on.
All right, next match we have Mascara Dorada versus Kushida. I'm going to go with Mascara Dorada in this one. This is the kind of match, this is the kind of tournament that Mascara Dorada is made
Built
for. This
for.
is tailor-made for him. Yes, this is Mascara Dorada's tournament to win or lose.
Yeah, I go with Dorada in this one as well because he's built to fly.
My instinct said Kushida, so I've got to go against you guys and go with Kushida here.
All right. Well, sticking to your guns. I don't fault you for that. What's the next one, Jason?
Last match we have is Ryosuke Taguchi versus Geto, and I'm going with Taguchi again. Geto's one of those torch passers, and I don't see him, especially with the first match, I don't see him winning the first match of the tournament.
Plus, he's not going to book himself to go over. I mean, am I right?
Yeah.
He's no Jushin Thunder Liger in that aspect, no.
No. So, yeah, I go with Taguchi in this one as well.
And I'll close it up, I think, Taguchi as well.
All right, that is the Best of the Super Juniors tournament, starting at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 a.m. Central, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. If you're watching it live on New Japan World, and as always, Jason, how do they do that?
I think you're
that's online at what is it, NJPW World? Let me bring it up in my browser. It's been a while since I've been there.
for only 999 yen per month.
999 yen, which comes out to like less than $10, including currency transversion.
Yeah, it's like $8.25 or something like that. It's ridiculous cheap.
But yeah, New Japan World, and my browser, of course, has crashed on me now, so I can't bring it up. But I think it is njpwworld.com. I think is the site.
Yeah.
I can bring it up since everybody else's browsers are crashed. njpwworld.com.
And Google Translate works very well for the site if you're using Chrome as a browser. You can set it to auto-translate. The tags will come up in English. The navigation will come up in English. There's web pages you can go to where you can find out how to sign up for it in English. So there's really no excuse not to go out there and for less than $10 a month, enjoy all the best pay-per-view action from New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Or even, we can make this even simpler. If you just type in New Japan Pro Wrestling in Google and go to their, it'll pull up the very first page, which will be an English translated page. That links you right to New Japan World. So even if you don't follow my instructions, if you just Google New Japan Pro Wrestling, you'll get there. Emerson, go ahead.
What's actually going to be the main event? The 10-man tag? Because, looking at the matches in the tournament, while they're all going to be very good matches, I think, I can't see any one of them being the main event just on their own.
Yeah, I didn't see a match order or what the main event was, just the announcement of the matches, but yeah, I could see them closing with that, just, have the tournament matches first and closing on the multiple man tag event, just to close on that.
Yeah, and it's going on for quite some time. It's not like they have to have the blow-away main event on the very first night.
Why not?
Because it's not NXT TakeOver, that's why.
Yeah, the nice thing is every day New Japan World's going to have tape delayed from various arenas throughout Japan of the previous days events from the tournament. There's going to be, I think, another live one coming up on the 30th, but in between them there'll be kind of delayed matches from all around Japan's arenas with this tournament going on. So that's definitely going to be something that I'll be watching pretty much every day and sending reviews into the site for.
And giving us
I can't wait for the G1.
That's what I was going to ask, actually, is if you were going to do the same thing for the G1 Climax and give us, constant score updates from the tournament of who's ahead and who's leading the blocks and who's coming out on top. That
would be something great to do, a live audio blog for us. I'm watching it.
You can do live audio blog, you can do recaps, you can do both. You cover as much of G1 Climax as you want, and I know that's a lot of shows. It's 12 shows in 2 weeks, but as much of it as you want to cover, we'll take.
Awesome.
All right, so before we wrap it up tonight, anything else that anybody wants to discuss, any issues that they want to get out, any rants? I'm looking at Emerson when I say that. Any rants they want to go on? The floor is open, gentlemen. Emerson, I'll start with you.
I had a really good Vince Russo rant. You can either listen to the entire episode of the Wrestling Outsiders podcast, which is streaming not only in its normal spot on blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Outsiders, but also streaming the last couple episodes right here on AngryMarks.com. And also, because I just have to promote myself, I took out the 6-minute Vince Russo rant and posted it to Facebook. So if you want to just hear me rant for 6 minutes about Vinny Roo, look up a middle finger to Vince Russo. Vince Russo himself did reply when I challenged him on Twitter. He told me that he was busy with his own website, which is why he never took me up on my open invitation to come onto my show and debate me on the matter. but what can you do? But go listen. Also, I know I'm getting my plugs out of the way now. I watched the worst movie ever. It was a porn disguised as an Ed Wood movie. Tonight, badmoviemonth.tumblr.com, full review of Orgy of the Dead.
Oh, that sounds bad just from the title, Orgy of the Dead. I'm picturing zombies having three-ways, and it's just a terrible picture in my head.
Oh my, that would be better than what happened.
Oh.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, go ahead.
Spoiler alert. They had roughly 10 minutes of material for this 90-minute movie, and the other 80 minutes was filled by Ed Wood. I don't know if he just went down to a strip club and got 7 or 8 women and proceeded to have them dance bare-breasted for 80 minutes of this 90-minute movie. Now, you would think entertaining enough, but no.
So you're saying this was an actual from Ed Wood's days of like Plan 9 from Outer Space movie, not like a tribute to Ed Wood movie.
No, this was an actual Ed Wood movie.
How have I never heard of this Ed Wood movie? I thought I'd seen all of them.
Orgy of the Dead. Like, he allegedly he didn't direct it, but he was involved so much in it that it's pretty much considered an Ed Wood movie.
So does it have like the Ed Wood trademarks of like the really bad special effects where you can see the wires on things and props falling over while they're filming and they didn't bother to reshoot it? Is it like that? Yes,
it also had the Wolf Man. He starts stretching and he's wearing a horrible wolf mask, which I think you can expect. But as he's stretching, you can see many inches of very human neck show up on screen. They didn't bother to reshoot or, have him not do that on camera.
Well, see, that actually happened on an episode of Doctor Who that I watched not too long ago. It was about the Hand of Omega, and Omega is this guy that lives in a alternate dimension that's like anti-gravity instead of gravity and antimatter instead of matter. And so he's supposed to be this being that's completely dissolved his body, and he's just living will because he's living in a universe of antimatter. But when he leans his head back to cackle under his mask, you can see a very human neck. It's like, why didn't they reshoot that? I mean, it's not like an Ed Wood movie. They could have. The BBC would have actually had the budget to film that again, but they didn't bother to.
Oh, boy.
Total nerd rant there. I apologize to all of our listeners.
Oh, I can't wait for Doctor Who to come back. I don't know when it's coming back, but I got the box set of the last season. FYE had it on sale for half off, so I snatched it up and yeah, I know.
I'm looking forward to it coming back too. I want to get more of our most angry, irascible doctor to ever play Doctor Who. The more the better. But Jason, your turn to get any closing rants or plugs that you want.
Yeah, let me send out one free plug for DDP Yoga, which is at ddpyoga.com, yoga program run by Diamond Dallas Page, which is helping me to lose some weight.
Mm-hmm. And it's done a lot of good things for a lot of people.
A shout out to my friend Dylan, who works and actually lives with DDP and Jake Roberts and Scott Hall.
Awesome. And a shout out to DDP in general, because he's been on this show many times, and we are fans of Positively Page, and we support DDP Yoga right here on AngryMarks.com. Kevin, do you have any plugs before we get off the air?
No, I don't really have anything to plug, but let me throw this question out here, just to kind of take the conversation back to TNA there for just a moment. We know TNA is like in the death throes here. I just want to throw this out for a quick discussion. What could TNA possibly do at this point to save itself in any capacity?
Nothing.
Yeah, I was tempted to say nothing, but I would say their only hope, and this is probably inconceivable to any of the people there, so it's never going to happen, but their only hope would be to abandon the U.S. market entirely, decrease their roster to a third of its current size, and continue to exist as a UK-based promotion with largely UK talent.
I know it sounds like I'm just being pessimistic, But it doesn't matter what happens, because Dixie Carter, both to her credit and to her blame, will be so incredibly loyal to everybody in TNA that while all logic dictates she needs to overthrow the company and just start over and hire new writers, hire wrestlers that don't feel stale and overused, and just hire new production, new blah, 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 she'll stick with the same people that have failed her for 10 years.
They won't stick with her, though, because they're not getting paid.
Yeah. Well, if they quit, I guarantee she'll find new people who will work for nothing as well for a little bit.
For a little bit, but they can't keep pulling that rabbit out of the hat forever. So, Jason, you get your last chance, the last word on this one before we wrap it up.
Last word on this. My fondest memories of TNA were in the days of their weekly Wednesday pay-per-views. That doesn't seem like a really feasible business model these days, but yeah, I'd say their last-ditch effort would be to go back to that kind of talent, that kind of a roster, and take a page out of New Japan's playbook and go streaming, really undercut what WWE has, maybe do it for $5 a month and have, just action that is kind of up there. Like you were saying, Raw is kind of turning it down. ROH is kind of toning it down with the injuries they have, but just kind of go balls to the wall with indie talent that's up and coming and do it maybe for $5 a month.
You know what?
Well,
let me
go ahead, Kevin.
Let me chime in here on this. Stevie pretty much summarized what I've been advocating for the last 3 or 4 years, actually, because that's where all of TNA's real hardcore action is right there in Europe, especially in UK. They have people who will actually pay for tickets. They don't have to pay for the crowd. People will hand over hard-earned money to pack out those arenas. So why not follow where the damn money is? Do that. But I would say even more than this, maybe they could possibly sacrifice their deal, save their deal with Destination America, kind of sort of what Jason alluded to, but Bionic Iguana mentioned this in the chat room, and I've kind of been advocating this for a while as well. Go to YouTube, put it all on YouTube for free, take Google ad money, just put it out there, because your production costs are already paid for already. This is just some extra money coming in. The worst thing that can happen is it renews the popularity in TNA. They may not make much more money, but their popularity is going to explode because unlike WWE Network, unlike New Japan Network, unlike Ring of Honor's subscription and limited TV service, it would be open, it would be free, it would be out there. People would be tuning it in, and they'd finally get to see what TNA is doing right now. That maybe could turn things around for him. But to Steve's point, I don't think Dixie Carter would ever let that happen because she's too damn proud. So let me ask this real briefly. Do you think if Dixie can't do it, can you sell the company to Eric Bischoff? Would he do it?
I don't think Eric Bischoff would even entertain that idea, considering he's currently suing for the money they already owe him.
Well, I mean, they, give him the company in exchange. I mean,
you're saying that TNA is only worth $120,000 at this point? That makes the WCW fire sale look like expensive by comparison.
It's only as valuable as what somebody will pay for it.
Man, you're basically saying I could own TNA if I sold my house.
Well,
that's what you're telling me.
Pony up a mortgage and make an offer, Stevie, because it's.
I wouldn't want to own that sinking ship. That's an epic fail. I wouldn't buy that.
Okay, if that doesn't work, what about Paul Heyman? Can he put an offer back on the table?
They already tried to bring in Heyman, and he basically said, "Give me full control or no dice, no deal." Well, and they wouldn't give it to him.
Well, here we are. I mean, the devil has come due. Can they consider that deal with Heyman now?
It's too late. That ship has sailed. He's with WWE now. He's not gonna leave them to go run a third tier company.
But let's say Heyman does leave. If Heyman got control, do you think Heyman would do that deal? Take it to Europe, take it online.
Oh man, I hate to speak for Paul because only Paul can do that, and Paul is more eloquent than all of us put together. But no, He would not do that because it's not where his bread is buttered anymore. He's had that. He's been there. The only reason he even entertained the offer is because TNA had a money mark putting it up, and that's the Carter family. The problem he had in ECW was that the money ran out. The product was great. The passion was there. The wrestlers were even willing to be deferred on their payments, which TNA is not really willing to do anymore. Their wrestlers are tired of that shit. So it was an ideal situation when he had a cult following back in the 90s and everybody loved it, and he hit the pinnacle of what he could, and then he ran out of money and it died. So why does he want to go back and revisit the past? I don't think he would at this point.
Right. So here's one final question for you. Where does TNA fit in the indie wrestling landscape now? Because as far as I'm concerned, between NXT and Jeff Jarrett's Global Force Wrestling, TNA's lunch has been eaten.
Yeah, I'd even go one further than that. I would say between NXT, Ring of Honor, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and Global Force Wrestling, and Paragon Pro Wrestling, and what's the name of that promotion in New York that's always on Undisputed Wrestling Show? Help me out here. Pro Wrestling Syndicate. They've all got TV deals. They're all better off than TNA at this point.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to chime in on that before we go?
Yeah, more importantly, who is TNA's audience? And I don't even think TNA knows who their audience is.
Geriatrics who don't turn off the TV on Friday night.
So
Exactly.
I'm not joking when I say that. Their average demographic is like 55 to 70 or something.
So they're competing against Fox News.
Pretty much.
There is your solution. There's your solution. You need Hannity. Bring Hannity onto TNA.
And Combs on Impact Wrestling. Oh my God.
Bring Hannity.
That's your announce team.
And the O'Reilly factor.
Oh my God.
And that hot Megan chick who doesn't know shit.
I'll give you one and only one reason I would want to see this. If Bill O'Reilly can take the Black Hole Slam into thumbtacks, that would be the greatest thing I ever saw all my life.
I don't know if O'Reilly. I think Hannity would sell it.
I don't care if he no-sold it. I just want to see it.
Oh, God.
That's our show, everybody. That's Thursday Night AMP. For the producer, Killicab, for my co-host, Emerson Witner, and for our guest, Jason Harland, thank you for listening. Have a good night, everybody.